be a 4.2 and don't be a 5. And what that means is my whole life, I think in a lot of sales training, you show up and you pitch that your solution is perfect. Everything benefit is great. And you want to look like Harvey Specter from Suits with the beautiful suit done up, or a power suit if you're a female. And the point is, I actually think more like Columbo and less like Cardone. So to me, a 4.2 is I want to show up a little bit on okay. And even for this podcast, Sweat Top, like I am comfortable being me. And until I learn that Costanza, which is show up a little on okay, and you'll relate to people, if you flaunt some of your flaws and be real about it, not as a tactic, but as truth.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Kevin Casey. Kevin is the author of Unselling. No, wait. Kevin is the best-selling author of Unselling. Sorry, Kevin. Welcome.
I was about to hang up.
I've got my notes in front of me, and because it's very cool. It's very cool to get a bestseller anyway. So I know how you feel on this one, but you knocked Alex Hormozy off the top, didn't you?
Well, listen, man, he's a musclehead. He wears strap shirts. I wear things to cover up my body. I don't go to the gym. I go to the pub. Alex Hormozy can body slam me. So I'm delighted to be next to him, but I'm okay not being ahead of him in line.
What a lovely response. Because this is going out. We want to be very careful about this.
I don't want to get beat up.
Yeah. I mean, congratulations on the book going straight into number one. It's very, very cool.
Yeah. Well, Fred, we actually spoke a year ago and you gave me some advice because anyone that's writing a book, this was a struggle for me. It was 753 days. It wasn't easy. Massive procrastination, massive inner doubt about why you're doing this. So I needed friends like you along the way and many others, but a bestseller, yeah, it's amazing. Sometimes I wonder why, but I'm just delighted that someone is paying attention to maybe feeling the same way I was as a salesperson back in 2012.
Right. So let's get into this then, because it's interesting why you've done it, and we can come into that. But before we kind of get into that, what is unselling? It's an odd expression. We think we need to know this before we go deeper on it.
Yeah. Well, the word actually came to me a long time ago. It's a really weird word. I know it's a bit of a pattern interrupt word, but sales is kind of in a bad mess. I mean, buyers are afraid of salespeople and salespeople are afraid of salespeople. I don't know if it can get any worse than that. That almost means that everyone on earth is afraid of salespeople. And I think the 1.0 version of Kevin Casey was such a seller, in quotes. And I started to figure out by doing the opposite, things changed for me. The word unselling just kind of struck me during COVID when I really started writing this book. It was the first thing that hit me was the name, and I just stuck with it. I wasn't quite sure why, but to me, it was just about opposites. So it's the opposite of behaving and showing up like most salespeople.
So that 1.0, what was that Kevin doing? And then we can work out what the opposites are.
I would say I ran my own business, so I did okay, but I think there's people who are selling poorly that can still do okay. What wasn't okay was that version of Kevin was the hard seller, the hustler, the grinder, the one call closer. I probably looked at people like Grant Cardone and Ari Gold, a fictional guy on Entourage, as people like I modeled myself after. And the issue is, even if you do okay, you actually don't like the person that's looking back at you every morning in the mirror. And that was Kevin Casey 1.0. And right up until 2012, and an incident happened, that's how I felt. And it was kind of an inside thing you don't talk about. You just don't feel very good about what you're doing as a profession.
Mm. So you started reflecting on yourself and kind of adjusting, and it sort of came to pass then that you, well, actually, you're kind of just doing the opposite of all the things that I'm doing. Literally the opposite, would you say?
Yeah. I mean, I wish it happened that smoothly. It happened like hitting a brick wall. Our agency was 15 people. We were very close to winning a big deal. I was on before Zoom, there was these awkward octagon shaped conference call units that we used to use. So there was no video, you just were on it. And I was getting thrown all this confetti on this call that I thought I was very close to winning the biggest deal of our agency's life. It would have doubled the size of our agency. And they were saying all nice things to me, these four people. And we went through the niceties to leave the call. I hit the wrong button. I literally hit the mute button instead of the hang up button. And because I'm curious, and I'm not sure whether people would keep listening, but I did, rightly or wrongly, because maybe I wanted to hear more good things about myself. Um, but then they started saying things like, let's work Kevin on the pricing and go back to the incumbent and see if we can save a few dollars. I don't like the fact he's in this part of Canada. It's too remote. I don't think it's worth switching for. Our ad agency's down the street. I listened to all this. The same people that were throwing confetti 30 seconds ago were now like a bully in the backyard. And then I hit the right red button and I hung up. And at that moment, I wasn't mad at them. I was mad at them for like 10 seconds. The truth of it was they were not comfortable being truthful to me. And I wondered how many times in my life this same incident had happened. But this time I hit the wrong button and I got to hear it. But I don't think it was the first time it ever happened to me. And because we don't create an environment of truth, people tell little white lies to us. And David Sandler said this line, you can go to heaven and still tell a lie to a salesperson. I don't think it really counts as a lie because with salespeople, people do it because of self-protection. That was the moment, Fred, that I said, I can't do this anymore and I can't sell for another 20 years. And obviously, I'm not creating a comfortable experience for people. And that's kind of when I went down a rabbit hole of saying, maybe I just do what George Costanza did in that Seinfeld episode, which I just do the opposite of everything I've ever done in my life with sales. And I experimented with opposites.
Wow. I, I'm writing down, I can see me taking a load of notes and I'm putting wrong button, right button. And now I can't remember which way around it is because in some ways, maybe it was the right thing and that was meant to happen. And hearing that, life changer for you, really, because you've
Well,
changed your complete tack on that.
what's really interesting is I could have either blamed those four people or I could have realized it was because of the way I was selling. And I spoke to a couple of my former ad agency people who are still there because I'm left the company since 2016. And they knew who the client was. I never did talk about it or reveal it, but they got the first four copies of my book, not as a act of vengeance or told you so. I just said thank you. And they can figure out whether they were those four people. If they read the book, they'll go, oh shit, I think that was us. But that's okay. It was a gift. Pressing that wrong red button was a gift for me.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting what they do as a result of it.
I haven't heard anything
What,
yet, so it probably didn't go over too well. I don't know.
the coffee cup on it or something, I don't know. What brilliant backstory. That's so cool. And so that 2000,
That was
12
2012. Yeah.
that you started thinking about this? You started making these gradual changes. You've maybe not so consciously until you start writing, but you kind of collated those changes and said, right,
It
this is it. And actually, when I've read, I'm looking and going, it is the complete opposite. Now I realize it is literally doing everything the other way round. That's how I've graduated into this unselling type, if
it's
you like.
exactly that. So I kind of codified it 14 for the book, but man, there was like 26. Some of them were colossal failures, by the way. Some of the opposites were not good. But it really came from this. I don't know. I learned a lot from Seinfeld and The Simpsons. I don't know. Sometimes in life, I went to business school, but sometimes I wonder, could I just watch Columbo and Seinfeld and I would have still been okay in life? There was this one episode where literally George Costanza, who's always down on himself, and I relate to him because he's a short guy like me, receding hairline. We got a lot in common. I always look for mentors that are short. Anyway, so he comes in and he groans on every day that everything is not working well in his life. And Jerry and Elaine are there. And Jerry said, George, if every decision you've ever made is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right. So at that moment, George decides to take a little risk and he orders the opposite lunch than he did 100 times before at the diner. And then Elaine sees this girl over at the bar making eye contact at their table. And Elaine says, George, that girl over there was just looking at you. And George says, Elaine, women do not look at short, bald men who live with their mother. And Jerry said, George, if everything you've done is wrong, the opposite has to be right. And he walks over, finds the courage to do it, and he taps her on the shoulder. And he said, I saw you looking over towards my table. And she said, yeah, I noticed you ordered the same lunch I did. And then he just ignores his inner critic and says, hi, my name is George. I live with my mother. I'm unemployed. And everyone just braces for bad impact. And she says, hi, my name is Victoria. And they start dating. so,
Right.
so that when I was writing this, I said, I don't want to create commandments or laws. So I created the Costanzas. I call the opposites Costanzas. And there's 14 of them in the book because I didn't want this to feel like a textbook. I really wanted to feel like information in an entertaining way, which a lot of people like Ben Settle call infotainment. So I wanted to read easy because it's really for busy entrepreneurs and freelancers who don't have time to read a lot of books. So I better make it an easy read. And I told a lot of stories. So it's really the before and after story of my life. And hopefully it'll save someone 12 years.
Well, we know the power of stories and that it is your story as well. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty amazing. People listening to this like practical stuff.
Mm,
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a really difficult question now.
go for
Nearly
it.
as hard as what's your favorite kid?
It's
Um,
7:30 in Canada in the morning, right? Like
exactly. I
Fred
hope you
took
had your coffee.
advantage of the time change here and he's got me like with bedhead and a hat on. So go for it. Throw a difficult question at me.
I don't know if it is harder or not than which is your favorite child, but of the 14 Costanzas, what's your favorite?
Easy.
Oh,
Costanza number 8, which is be a 4.2 and don't be a 5. And what that means is my whole life, and I think in a lot of sales training, you show up and you pitch that your solution is perfect. Everything benefit is great. And you want to look like Harvey Specter from Suits with the beautiful suit done up or a power suit if you're a female. And the point is, I actually think more like Columbo and less like Cardone. So to me, a 4.2 is I want to show up a little bit on okay. And even for this podcast, Sweat Top, like I am comfortable being me. And until I learn that Costanza, which is show up a little on okay, and you'll relate to people. And if you flaunt some of your flaws and be real about it, not as a tactic, but as truth, I think it just lowers the resistance. And it did for me. So that's my favorite Costanza because I was taught to show up perfect. And I don't know if it was my Catholic upbringing in a school, but people don't like the smartest kid in the class unless you're that kid.
Mm. No, that's true. And I have heard other people speak about this. Todd Capone speaks about this a hell of a lot, doesn't he? Being transparent,
100%.
lead with a flaw, he says. It is a tactic to a degree, but for me, it's quite an ethical tactic. How can it be unethical when you're saying, hey, look, this is what you're looking for. We might not be the best, but if you're looking for these other things, well, then absolutely we
You
are.
got it. You know,
That's
Fred,
spot
this is
on.
really
Really good.
frustrating because I have a brother in real estate. I have a lot of friends who are real estate agents. And they sometimes ask my advice, and I don't know if they ever implement it, by the way. But one of the things I said to my brother as a real estate agent is when you do these open houses, every house has a flaw. And these people are coming in, new couples, new partners, excited about the house. I just think if you bring up something very real, not as a tactic, but the truth, like there's been issues with the air conditioning upstairs, just want to let you know that, or there was a leak last year. It is being resolved by the owners, but I wanted to be straight up. That is not fixed yet. And I just want to get that before you guys get too into this. I want to get that on the table. To me, by doing that, everything you say after has more credibility. But I've yet to see one of my real estate friends do that because I keep asking them, have you done it? And it's like, well, no, no, no. Because, I don't want to lose a sale. I said, well, first of all, you never had it to begin with. You can't lose what you didn't have. Two is there flaws? Well, there is some. Well, just be upfront and say it because they're not used to real estate agents doing that. The hardest part for all this, Fred, and you teach some amazing stuff on this too, is not reading the book. It's not enough. Like if you don't find the courage to do it and have people roll their eyes. When I started some of these things, Costanzas, people roll their eyes. Other business owners around me said, Kevin, that's ridiculous. You can't talk to a CEO like that. You can't write that in an email. You've got to use $50 words. I said, no, you don't. I use 5-cent words. And that's another Costanza, number 11, is like use 5-cent words, how you talk to people over a coffee or a drink, and not $50 words like you're in some kind of Shakespearean play.
Oh, I love that one. I mean, yeah, that's I was just, you saw me probably nodding, massively in agreement. I've got a friend who's a dealer principal, car dealership, and I met him in the pub, and some of his guys were there. He said, "Oh, Fred, you're a sales trainer. Come on, tell my guys what to do." And I told them about that leader of the floor, and these guys looked at me like I was the biggest idiot on the earth.
Always,
You know,
always.
I give a very simple, like, "Oh, if there's a ding on the car, don't stand in front of it, like, probably just say, 'Oh, look, there's that, but we can fix that.'" But the reason I'm showing you is because it's perfect for all the other things. They're just looking at me again, "This guy doesn't get anything.
No,
What a clown."
a-
I'm like, "Okay, fair enough."
absolutely right. So
It's
it's the courage to do these things. I don't think any of these Costanzas are tough. I think the hard part is ignoring the other people that are struggling with sales around you, telling you you're going to look stupid doing it. My point is ask them how they're doing. They're struggling.
yeah, yeah. So this 5-cent words thing then, versus the $50 words. Just tell me a little bit more about that. I think I know where you
Well,
go,
again,
but,
I was the poster child for using big words in emails and presentations. So I've seen very normal people like me at that point talk to people like you and I are now. And all of a sudden they go into sales mode and they start talking about streamlining, innovation, state of the art. I mean, it gets all words that just feels like a marketing brochure, feels just completely unattainable. So to me, if I'm selling insurance, and insurance is full of jargon, by the way, it's riddled with jargon. And someone says, well, Kevin, what do you do in business insurance? I said, I help business owners avoid the 3 a.m. sweats.
brilliant.
And then I stop and they go, now, if I had said I'm an insurance broker, I'd be alone at a party in the corner, drinking by myself and no one around. So now I just kind of say, I help business owners avoid 3 a.m. sweats. And people go, how do you avoid doing that? And then you talk about it.
Yeah.
So to me, it took me a long time. I would say, I was taught in a Catholic school, then went to university. It did nothing for my writing style. I write now like I talk, and I don't write like I'm in some kind of. My grade 8 teacher, if she saw me at the supermarket, would probably hate me today, because if she read my book, there'd be red marks all over my book. You can't write like that. Well, guess what? I write like humans talk, and I know selling is emotional. And the only way to get people emotional is to sound like a human, not like a thesaurus.
Yep. Like they talk, like they read. So it's easy, it's comfortable. A big block of text. Okay, that's fine for a novel. We're not writing novels.
No,
Um, this one I think is really interesting because I think we're going to have an epidemic of $500 words being used all
oh,
over the shop. Generative AI has
bring it
been
on.
trained as its default that this is how humans speak. Yeah,
Yeah,
because we probably write so much stuff like that. And then you get stuff coming out of ChatGPT. It's like, what?
yeah.
Empower, embrace, unleash, whatever. It's like, I don't think I've ever used those words. I've never fostered a relationship in my life. I've built quite a few, but and people are, oh yeah, that sounds really good. I'm going to start using that. But it's going to get worse.
It's going
I
to
think.
get
I don't know. I
way.
hope not, but
I'm not worried at all. I think AI is going to have an amazing role in certain jobs in life, but humans are humans, and nothing's really changed. Platforms have changed, technology's changed, but the way people make decisions and the way people communicate really hasn't. And I can tell a chat GBT, I can just tell. And I want to be in a way that I want to speak to people in a way that chat GPT can't even figure out. They'll just move on to the next person. Like it's easier to duplicate someone else than how I'm going to talk, even with my weird Canadian accent.
yeah. But what if we built Kevin AI, trained it with your stuff from all the podcasts you're going to be doing, from the book you've written, from that sort of thing? So Kevin AI speaks like Kevin Casey. Wow.
Listen, if there's
Now we're
royalties
talking.
in it, I'm willing to talk.
That's all for the future. Um, no, that's an interesting one, but yeah, just making things simple, particularly when it's so noisy and there's so much stuff. Relevant, simple, bang, got it. Yeah, understood. Wow, someone who actually
It's,
talks sense.
I feel so. I've owned a business, Fred, for 23 years. I've been an entrepreneur, so I'm unemployable if anyone tried to hire me, because when you run your business that long, no one will ever hire you. So you better figure it out. But I think the people I hope get a lot from my book, if I had to pick a group, are all these entrepreneurs and freelancers who actually have an amazing gift to share the world. They really do. But they're hiding in the shadows, and they're literally riddled with anxiety because they believe, and maybe rightly so, by the way, that all sales has to be pushy and sleazy, and they don't want to go down that road. So what they do is they put their shingle up. They spend a lot of time on the perfect name and the perfect website and the perfect business card. And they do all these other things that procrastinate the one thing that they avoid, the one place they never wanted to be in their life. And they can't believe that they got to sell. And my point to them is, you don't need to sell in a way that you need to sell out who you are. But my God, if you don't get over the fact that without sales, your business is going to be one of those statistics, you're going to get in trouble. So the whole first part of my book is all about on learning. And I called it on learning. Every section has a theme that if I don't strip that crap out of their head and let them know that's their professional duty, that if someone is suffering from a problem that they solve and they don't get out the door and sell it, then to me, they're not a professional. So you better believe that sales is not a dirty word and there's a way to do it, but ignoring it, um, you're going to be working for someone else pretty soon. So you better get over it.
And there's this massive irony, isn't there? Because what you're then, once we've stripped all that out, because that what they've learned is the stuff that doesn't work, but it's what they think works because that's the perception of it. It's to unlearn back into that's what I would naturally do. What talk to people, help people, understand them, be natural, be like decent, serve, like yeah, all those. Yeah.
That's it. So you solve problems and they all go, yep, I solve a problem. Perfect. Start there. What you will naturally do, because you see other people doing it, you see Hollywood doing it, is you sell your product. And it's because they're nervous. And when people are nervous and they're not sure what they do, I don't think they have commission breath. I actually think they have unconscious commission breath, which is very different because the people with commission breath, the hard sellers, they know exactly what they're doing. I think there's a whole bunch of small business people and freelancers that have unconscious commission breath. And because they're so nervous, they talk faster, they stick with 87-page PowerPoints, their safeguard is marketing language, and they believe they're selling their product because that's what they're comfortable with. They don't realize if you just started by talking about the problem, that's what's interesting to people. So you're just not interesting. And you're doing it because you don't know where to start. And for me, my biggest argument with these people when they say they're not salespeople is I said, guys, I was not a natural salesperson. Sales is absolutely a learned skill. And it is messy, like riding a bike as a kid. You're going to fall. But Tom Hanks did not come out of the womb to be Forrest Gump. Michael Jordan did not come out of the womb to be a basketball player, and they would be insulted if you said they were naturals. I believe it's the same with sales. It gets a lot of reps, got to go in, and you better figure out a process. And there's a million of them out there, including Fred. You'll have yours, I'll have mine. For God's sakes, just pick one that feels like it fits and follow it the same way a pilot would fly a plane or a surgeon would do a surgery. They don't decide when they're taking an appendix out. I think I'll start somewhere different today because it's kind of boring and I want to be different. Just like pick something, but it's always starting with a problem.
Yep. The problem, which is what's most interesting to that person. So you talk about them. Yeah, to them, about them. It's like,
That's it.
if that's
My
anything
mother
people take from
may
this,
say to me, Fred,
awesome.
by the way, Kevin, it's negative to start with a problem. And I said, Mom, do you watch the news every night at 8? My mother never misses the news. I said, what do they start with? Oh, they start with problems going on because that's what people pay attention to. So I'm not trying to change the world. And I'm trying not to change human behavior. I wish we could talk about good news and rainbows and fairy tales. The point is, people don't care what you do. They only care what you can do for them. And you better start with bringing some kind of hypothesis in the first 20 seconds about something that's going on in their head that they're thinking about at 3:00 in the morning. And if you can't do that, you're not ready to sell. Most of the hard part of selling has got to be done before you even start prospecting. That's where people skip.
Yeah. That is a podcast in itself. That's actually a whole series of podcasts, which is forming that hypothesis and turning up able to say, hey, look, I reckon that this is the stuff that's going on in your world. It sounds really arrogant. However, if somebody gets that right, it's like, wow, well, yes, this is awesome. You totally get it. You get me. Let's talk more about that.
Right.
It doesn't come across as that.
And Fred, if it doesn't connect with them, there's 7.8 billion people in the world. You just got to the truth. So I didn't think I had a taxi problem here in North America until I got into an Uber for the first time. And I couldn't believe what my friend was doing when he ordered on his phone and I watched the car drive when I didn't have to go outside in the wet. I didn't have to exchange money. I could tell who the driver's name was. I could tell how many trips they did. I haven't taken a cab in 6 years. I didn't have a taxi problem until Uber came along and told me, you got a taxi problem. And that's what you got to do. You got to enter it somehow and say, I've got a different way, not a better way, a different way to do things than you're doing it now? Are you even curious? And if they say they're mildly curious, now you start a conversation. And if they don't, for God's sakes, let them leave the room and let them leave the call and move on, because you can't solve all the problems that are out there.
Brilliant. Brilliant. We need to move on. And I could talk about this forever. Time has just flown. Time has just flown. I wanted to get 3 Costanzas out of you because I know the brain likes threes. But look, you've given us 2 absolute crackers. There's another 12 there in the book. There's also
Yeah,
how to unlearn so that you can then take these on. Um, where do people get in touch with you? Because you talk about all this stuff for free anyway. They don't even need to buy the book, do they? Because you will put a load of this stuff out.
I
Where can we
do.
see that?
I don't hold much back, and I don't actually have anything other than the book. I don't have anything to sell. So when people reach out for coaching, and maybe I'm a dummy that way, but I don't have anything to sell on that. This book was really important to get out of my head. It's out. I'm delighted. If they want to actually learn a bit more about me, obviously I'm on LinkedIn, or you can go to www.kevincasey.ca, because I couldn't get .com, and I've tried to buy it. And it's like, there's some Kevin Casey somewhere else that will not take 2,500 US for the .com. So it's kevincasey.ca. It's all I could get.
That's so funny. I don't have a problem with Fred Cope steak.
I know mine's just too common. I mean, it's almost as bad as Smith.
Oh,
Anyways, that's where you can do it. The book is on Amazon, of course. I think if you're feeling anxious about selling, it might help soothe the pain a little bit, because I was once in your shoes, so I get it.
awesome. We will drop those links into the show notes so people can see those there. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on
Listen,
early in the
thank you,
day,
Fred.
Canada time. But it's
Fred's been a great to me advisor long before he put me on the podcast. He was very generous because he's written books before, which I had, by the way. I wasn't guilted into it. But he's one of these people that helps. So I actually think you're one of the people that gave me the courage to keep pushing on through the journey. So thank you.
oh, brilliant! No, thank you. It's awesome to have seen it come to fruition. Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the collaborative selling scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.